At work, what's a red flag that only the people who are the lowest on the totem pole are likely to notice? Story 1. Unpaid bills. As the bottom of the totem in a financial department for a small nonprofit, I was the one putting bills into the system and then would print checks and mail them out when the higher-ups said to. When I first started, almost every bill was behind. They covered it up by claiming the person I was replacing hadn't been able to keep up with the workload, and that was why everything was late. I spent over half my time on the phones talking to companies about not shutting down our utilities. Maybe the last person was that slow, but it was not that much. Full-time work? Yes, but too much? Dog trash. Fortunately, the right man had come in as CEO just before me, and he literally saved the company from collapse. I just happened to see what should have been the end of the company. He was smart, though. No bills were paid until employees had been paid, and no bills but critical ones were paid at all. Then he paid massive portions of debt off quickly to put us back in acceptable standing as we worked out payment plans. That man saved a small company with a $1 million deficit in under a year. I work in a different department now, but its annual profit is now around $2 million. Dang, we actually get to start off with kind of a little feel-good good news story, Things turned out okay, and I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, and paying the employees first, that is very important. And if they're not paying employees first or on time, that's a red flag. So, good little lesson just tucked in there. Story 2. Bosses who take responsibility for nothing. I had a boss regularly tell me how to do something incorrectly. Her boss would correct her, then she would punish me for doing it wrong, for doing exactly what she told me to do. She'd do things like spill a coffee all over a worker's super important documents, then not apologize or admit it was her fault or even an accident she was responsible for. No, she blamed a step stool that was on the floor next to her that wasn't even in the way of her sitting down or the counter. Coworker was crying while I was trying to rescue the papers, and boss spent the whole time being a bee about the step stool because she was too embarrassed and immature and disrespectful to own up to it. These are genuinely some of the worst bosses. Bosses who will not, admit when they've made a mistake. And also, they love to blame their employees for doing a bad job. But the fact is, whose job it is to help make sure the employees are doing a better job and being taught properly? I'll give you a hint. It's you, terrible boss. It's you. Story 3. 1. My daughter's first job out of college last year was working for a small internet marketing company. Her entire department was given an unexpected furlough during the last 2 weeks of December, and I told her to start looking. She got a layoff notice after Christmas via the instant messaging platform they used. Classy. She now works for a much better company. Story 2. One of our favorite restaurants, locally owned, stopped taking credit and debit cards. Their machine was broken. This was before the rise in popularity of services like Venmo and Apple Pay. They would occasionally have their phone disconnected. They've been out of business for a few years now. Story 4. The top guy sees everyone else as the help. I work for a company where the corporate office is probably like 25 people. On my first day, I was in the break room by myself, and then the guy that hired me and the owner walked in, and the owner went to the coffee pot. The guy that hired me said, "Hey, Jim, this is BTL89, the newest member of our team." Owner doesn't even turn and look at me and just goes, "Oh," and puts a lid on his coffee and walks out without even looking my way. I lost a ton of respect for him and the company that day, especially after my interview 2 days prior. They were talking up how much they care about their employees. I do think it is important that a workplace care for their employees. I think it's extremely important. I am always very suspicious, though, when workplaces talk too much about that. Like, oh, we love our employees so much. We take care of them. And by God, if a workplace says, when you're here, you're not just an employee, you're family, run. Absolutely run. Unless the person doing the hiring is like a sweet old grandmother giving you some like tea and biscuits. No employer who says that their company is like a family should be trusted, in my opinion. Story 5. I realize this doesn't count, but civilians may find this interesting. In the Navy, United States, it's a well-known, and at least it wasn't my ship, oftentimes true fact that if out of nowhere the ship's galley, kitchen, serves steak and lobster, there is bad news coming from the captain, usually in the form of you're going on an unexpected deployment, your deployment's being extended, or something along those lines. It happened to us multiple times as to where we hated seeing that on the menu, and after dinner like clockwork, the captain hit us with the bad news. Story 6. This applies more to the tech industry, but when the CEO calls a meeting out of the blue and says they have plenty of funding, start interviewing. Should have done this at my last insurance gig. They suddenly brought us all in and told us we were all secure in our jobs despite a recent turnaround in the market. One guy in my department started looking immediately. He left shortly thereafter. 2 weeks after he left, they told everybody we were getting canned in 4 months. Story 7. As someone who used to be busy most of the time, the fact that I've found myself stretching 30 hours of work into 40 all of a sudden was the first sign of bad times soon. Shortly after that started, our boss announced that there was a cash flow problem due to a combination of factors. Less work, clients not paying, projects not progressing, thus not being able to bill hours, etc. I started looking for work immediately. Have had some interest, but nothing concrete yet. The first person got let go last week, a recent hire. I doubt I'm next, but you never know. Story 8. When you all get the speech that you need to give 110% to the job and be a team player willing to take on more roles. On the surface, this does not seem bad, but what my experience taught me is it translates out to, we've let people go, we are not rehiring, we expect all of you to take on those other jobs too with no additional pay. And if they start playing funny games with breaks, lunch hours, and overtime or demanding work after you've clocked out, it is time to get the F out. Look, everyone, it's not our fault that business is doing bad. It's your fault. You're not doing enough, and it has nothing to do with the way we run things and the decisions that we've made up top, even though we've decided that we're so important that we deserve to make so much more than you. No, it's definitely all of you who have failed us. Story 9. At my husband's large Fortune 50 company, they were laying off several dozen people each quarter starting in 2009. Your department would get an email to meet at an off-site conference facility Friday morning. From there, those being let go would be handed a box with your personal stuff, a brown-bagged lunch, a packet with your severance info in exchange for signing a corporate waiver, and handing in your badge. You didn't get to clean out your office, say goodbye, finish your work. You were just gone. This went on for nearly 3 years. Terrible way to live. He managed to make it to retirement, but to this day, he can't look at a brown bag lunch. That's cold as F. Story 10. Missing payday. If you get paid on Wednesday and Friday comes without pay, don't bother coming in on Monday. Friday, payday. No pay comes at the end of the day on Monday, walk out. No other reason you're there. You work for pay. Story 11. Whenever we got a cheap gift or some new perk from a corporation congratulating us on increased profits for the year, it was pretty much a guarantee that a month later we'd be told that there would be no bonus. Thanks. I can't wait to pay rent with this coffee mug full of pre-dried out ballpoint pens. Oh, I would rather that a company not give me anything rather than give me just a cheap garbage gift. No joke, I worked for a big, multi-million-dollar company owned by an extremely wealthy person, well-known, as it were. And for my birthday, my first birthday with the company, my gift from the company was like a $5 Subway gift card. I would rather they had spit in my mouth than disrespect me with that. Okay, I was a little intense with that. I have come back to add some clarification. It is also that, like, the supervisors and managers were getting, like, multi-$1,000 bonuses and stuff like that. and the rest of us, like sales workers, were being given trash like that. It's not that I hate Subway, though I don't like it. Story 12. Was once told by the cleaner, this place is fricked. I used to change the toilet rolls in the bogs twice a day, now it's barely twice a week. They're either crapping less or we're getting less clients through the door. She was absolutely correct. Place got extremely downsized within 6 months of that. Story 13. Late pay. I've heard a few stories from people who have been paid late and stayed instead of looking for a new job, then later being made redundant. If the cash flow is so bad, payroll is coming late, it's time to get out of there. Story 14. Requests for personal time off are ignored or denied. Likewise, requests for specific vacation days go unaddressed or become postponed. I'm leaving my current job in big part because of this exact thing. Once I got married, requested some time off for it, and was told to come in. Yeah, right. Story 15. A drastic cut in your hours for those who work hourly service jobs. If you go from 5 shifts to 3, then down to 1 or 2, you're going to be let go. They're either waiting for you to get fed up with the hours and quit, or you're about to be fired. Story 16. Cleaning workers are usually bottom rung, but they'll notice failing health standards before anyone else. Story 17. Every boss I've had from the military to retail sales who says, "I'm not here to be liked," has been incompetent. It's true you're not there to be friends with everyone, but if you have no people skills, you can't manage people. There's a big difference between a boss who says they aren't there to be liked versus a boss who isn't there to be friends. It's tough to be someone's friend and boss. I love this and the way that it's been put because I don't think I've ever truly thought of it that way. But yeah, any kind of boss who will say, "I'm not here to be liked," like, that's kind of part of what you're supposed to do. Yeah, like being a boss is more than just, I am in charge. It's managing people. It's taking care of them. It's helping your employees and stuff. Like, there, so many people who get into these leadership positions do not actually understand what it means to be a good boss. Story 18. Equipment falling into disrepair. OSHA standards being ignored. Workers being asked to lie about injuries. Can confirm. Got fired shortly after I got injured on the job and found out my employer didn't have workers' comp insurance. Story 19. I've seen 2 companies go down the tubes. In both cases, the first sign was removing unnecessary telephones. Where workers shared an office, the private lines were replaced by a shared line. When things got worse, one shop removed the doors from the bathroom stalls to discourage lingering. Story 20. This may only apply to retail and food service, but price hikes. If prices are increasing abnormally and quality is stagnant, then either 1, the company is losing money, or 2, the company is getting greedy and starting to bite off more than they can chew. Upper management can increase a product's cost by $2 or $3 and not bat an eye. All they see is profit margins. However, the lower down hourly wage employees have to deal with angry customers and pressure from corporations if sales begin to drop. Story 21. Look for any changes in benefits or amenities. Like if all of a sudden they cancel the coffee service, or if they normally have free meals or something they stop providing them. If you ever get asked to list what you do on a daily basis or to document difficult tasks that only you perform, beware. We need a summary of everything you do to be written in a procedural manual equals you're about to be replaced by some college intern. Story 22. IT admin shutting off access/accounts when layoffs are happening. When our CIO got laid off, I heard the admin who got the orders had his sphincter tightened and triple checked the order. Likely he knew before any of the CIO's direct reports in the vast majority of the company. Story 23. When passing down the hall, people who ignore your good morning unless they need something from you or you're a higher up. This is a major red flag, and to anyone lowest on the hierarchy, it's crystal clear. Story 24. Worsening conditions in the back room. The more stuff that gets backstocked, the more full the backroom gets, which makes it harder to keep it organized, which makes it harder to find what you need to send to the sales floor, which means less product on the sales floor, which means fewer sales. Fewer sales leads to less profit, leads to fewer hours for the low-level employees, leads to the backroom getting worse. Retail logistics is a vicious cycle if you let it be. Oh, this is a cycle that I've seen play out in a number of different, department stores and places like that, where, it's this just ever feeding cycle where they're not giving the workers enough time and treating them poorly. And then when they're not able to do their job well enough, it just makes things worse for them and nothing ever gets done until things are like a disaster. And then they do a big clean sweep and things look good for like a month or so and it all starts to fall apart again. Story 25. Cleaners see everything. Late bill payments on desks, employees cheating on their spouse, empty liquor bottles placed in envelopes in the trash. I've been a cleaner for 15 years and I've seen literally everything. Story 26. Find out the employee turnover rate, especially if it's a small company. I worked at a place that started out great, seemed to have great pay and benefits, but had more and more problems with management. Then I started finding out that our 5-person office had 11 people quit or be fired over the past year. Major red flag. I stayed and put up with their crap much longer than I should have. Story 27. A hiring freeze and mandatory overtime raises a few eyebrows. The second a job tells me I have mandatory overtime, if I'm salaried, not hourly, is the second I quit without notice. Story 28. I'm a tech writer, which means I sometimes get to be effectively the first user of a new application, as I'm writing the manual for it. You can always tell where the company has saved cash, usually on UI/UX design and UI copy. I'm fairly technical, a bit of front-end coding skill, basic familiarity with a range of tech, jack of all trades, so if I'm struggling to work out how to do stuff in your UI, I kinda assume customers will. Story 29. I came into the shop I worked in one day and all the sales assistants were tapping the ratty old carpet down. Weird, I thought. Then the fire escape door didn't close, so we started locking it with 2 bike locks. Odd, I think. Then I got told not to order in some of our more expensive stock during a very busy time of year. One night as I was closing up, I saw my boss leaving in a much nicer car than he used to have. Ah, frick. We're closing down. I'm sure there are some folks who are a little confused by that last thing. The boss was leaving in a nicer car than he used to have? Well, doesn't that mean that the business is doing well if he's making more money? And I really appreciate your naivete. It's such a nice, optimistic look. But no, when there are businesses like that, the owners and higher-ups will see oh, things are going poorly. And so instead of using our money to help keep it afloat, let's just take everything we can from it before we bail ship and leave the rest of the workers with as little as possible. And I know that sounds like a real pessimistic, fatalistic view on things, but it's a realistic view, unfortunately. Story 30. Water damage and termites will start affecting the lowest part of a totem pole first. Wood sculptures should be installed into higher ground so water flows away from the base during rain. Also, totems don't usually feature flags, so a red flag is a red flag. Story 31. If your company gives you a phone, get ready to be harassed. Constantly. That phone is code for, we expect you to be available 24/7 so your direct supervisor doesn't have to be. Until you need them. Then it becomes a voicemail leaving device. Story 32. The way the bosses or owner treat their staff is very indicative of the work environment. Lowest man on the totem pole will often catch the most crap. How the boss delivers that crap says a lot. Story 33. My dad worked 45 years for Sears Canada. We saw the flags a mile away when they start selling assets and giving big bonuses. Story 34. Mice. Workers will notice mice before management even knows or really cares. Unless your bosses are cats. Story 35. This is a really insightful question. In restaurants, as a server, if the kitchen is in a bad mood, you know you are fricked for the shift. Usually it means the manager is on a rampage. Story 36. Bad management and poor leadership at the top because you have to do the work on the ground to implement their vision. Crap flows to the bottom. Story 37. When you are discreetly contacted by law enforcement agencies asking questions about your employer and place of work. Story 38. Efficiency experts are brought in to sit with employees and observe their daily tasks. I've worked for a few places that hired on, got some company to come in that helped with efficiency or, workflow, stuff like that. And it's never been a good sign. It doesn't help anything because the problems are far more deeply rooted in management and the owners of the company. And these efficiency experts are just like, oh, well, people, they're taking too long in the bathroom. That's not the problem. The way the managers are handling things is the problem. Yeah. Dinguses. Story 39. When paychecks bounce. The amazing thing about that job was the checks cleared. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.